Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Whispers in the Dark by Courtney Konstantin, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Marlowe. He's not guilty. I fought the urge to pound my forehead onto the table. Serving on a Washington County jury seemed exciting to me in the beginning. I didn't even mind the 30-minute drive each day from my house in Beaverton. But after sitting through the case for 2 days, I felt the conviction was clear. Instead, there was one guy that just refused to agree with the rest. Don, the lone holdout, leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest like an overgrown toddler. He didn't even try to hide his smirk. Standing from my seat, I went to the large window. They didn't have a view, just the sky and the concrete building next to them. I watched people moving behind the windows. None of them looked as frustrated as I felt. Missing 2 days of work as the shift manager at my neighborhood Target wasn't so bad. I had always been obsessed with true crime, making the robbery trial interesting. I loved listening to podcasts during my bus rides to and from work. Any time I had free, I had earbuds in and was listening to something gruesome. What I hadn't realized was how one person could throw a wrench into everything. Thinking about my job, I checked my backpack again. I crammed my uniform into the small bag. The uniform would be wrinkled, like the crumpled paper balls I'd been playing basketball with. I cringed, knowing I never cared about being wrinkled. The director of my store had mentioned me being a better example for my employees. I wasn't planning on staying at Target forever, so my impact on those employees mattered little to me. Come on, Don. We've gone over this. His fingerprints were on the gun. He had motive, and the security footage. The foreperson was a saint. Clearly frustrated like everyone else, the older woman calmly addressed the man who was keeping them in the room longer than expected. Yeah, Don waved a dismissive hand. That video is grainy as hell. Could be anyone. You all just want to convict someone so you can get home faster. No, we want to convict the guy who actually did it, I snapped before I could stop myself. Don's eyes flicked to me, his expression shifting ever so slightly. For a second, something passed over his face, something cold, assessing. Then his smirk returned. You seem real eager to put a man away, sweetheart. The word sweetheart made my teeth grind. I crossed my arms, refusing to let my irritation show. It's not about what I want, Don. It's about evidence. His smirk widened, like he enjoyed getting under my skin. I'm just saying, maybe you shouldn't be so quick to believe what the system tells you. You ever think about that, Miss Perfect Juror? A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. His fingerprints were on the gun, even though it was only a paintball gun, another juror said from the other end of the table. He could have handled the gun prior to the robbery. There's no way to know. Exclamations of disbelief popped around the room. You have to be kidding. What did he just say? I just want to go home. Bursting from his chair, another man paced. His anger was a heat wave coming off his body. Don, man, none of us want to continue to be stuck in this room. Trying to claim the guy had somehow touched a gun that his defense says he never owned is really reaching. I had to agree. Since the beginning of the 2-day trial, Don had been disagreeable. Though he answered all the questions correctly when they were all being chosen for the jury, his attitude toward the entire process appeared after the day they had been led into the jury room the first time. His disdain for the court, the prosecution, and the trial was clear. He had hidden it in front of the judge, so the entire jury was stuck with him. Michael is right. You have to have more solid evidence to discount the clear forensics being presented, Don. The foreperson spoke up again, working to bring down the tension in the room. Don's face screwed up into a snarl. He's being railroaded, and I say he's not guilty. A collective groan rose around the room, and I opened my mouth in a silent scream, throwing my head back. When I looked across the room, my eyes met a woman sitting there, and we shared a knowing look. Okay. The foreperson sighed loudly, even her temper being pushed by Don's inability to get on board. I guess we start from the beginning. Flopping back into my chair, I didn't think twice before resting my head on the table, tuning out the chaos as arguments and curses erupted around me. My shoulder-length dark hair curtained my face, and I fought the urge to close my eyes and sleep. I had taken jury duty very seriously, so my hair was controlled, the waves sleek and professional. The sheath dress I was wearing was cheap from Target and definitely not very comfortable, and Dawn was delaying me from changing out of it. I hated people like Dawn, people who just wanted to be difficult for the sake of it, and worse, I could feel his eyes on me. I lifted my head sharply, and sure enough, Dawn was still staring, his smirk fading into something unreadable. He didn't look away. Something about the way he studied me, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve, sent a cold prickle down my spine. It was just after lunch, and we hadn't gotten past the first vote, all thanks to Dawn's stubborn not guilty. Every other juror seemed unwavering in their stance, convinced they knew the truth, yet here we were, gridlocked. Lifting my head, I stared down the table at Dawn. I'm guessing you either don't have a job to get to, or you're avoiding the one you do have. But some of us don't have that luxury. So maybe, I don't know, stop making things harder than they need to be. The mumbling that had been going on around the room screeched to a halt as everyone looked over at me and then at Dawn to see his reaction. His mouth was hanging open. His lack of immediate argument surprised me. Close your mouth, dear. You're going to catch flies like that, the foreperson said in a sweet voice. Chuckles sounded around the room and Dawn's face went beet red. I had to contain my urge to cringe away as his angry eyes locked on me specifically. The door opened and a bailiff appeared. The woman had been assigned to the jury since the beginning, and she looked around, taking in the scene immediately. A small frown appeared between her brows before her gaze landed on me. Marlowe Reed? My voice squeaked as I replied in surprise. Yes? There's a phone call for you. I didn't move at first, remembering that the jury wasn't supposed to have access to their cell phones while in deliberation. That thought was fleeting as I realized the only person that could be trying to reach me was my mother. Hey, I thought we couldn't have phone calls. Don, the dissenter, dropped his fist on the table, causing the foreperson to jump. There are exceptions, and that's not your concern. Every day, the bailiff had been forced to cater to his absurdly specific lunch requests, as if this were some five-star hotel instead of a courthouse. The jury's patience had worn thin. Everyone was completely over him. I moved to follow the bailiff out of the room. The woman was much taller than me, making me feel like a child behind her. When we got to a separate office, she smiled warmly at me. Your mother is the only one I would bring you out for. The judge made sure to note that she's sick. I'm sorry to hear that. I looked at my feet, studying the cheap, shiny dress shoes I was wearing. Thanks. Cancer. There wasn't a word in existence that scared me more. It loomed over everything, made even worse by the fact that I hadn't been able to talk to her much while stuck serving jury duty. Every time I called, it seemed she was with the doctors or trying to rest, and I couldn't bring myself to interrupt her. The weight of it all twisted my stomach into knots as I took the phone the bailiff handed me. She gave me a kind smile before quietly leaving the room, shutting the door behind her. The handset felt heavier in my hand than it should have, like it carried the weight of everything I couldn't say. I pressed it to my ear, my voice coming out shaky. Mom, are you okay? Her voice on the other end was soft, weaker than I remembered, but still hers. Hi, sweetheart. I didn't mean to bother you at the courthouse, but I just needed to hear your voice. Guilt hit me like a freight train. You're not bothering me. God, Mom, I've been trying to call you. I didn't want to interrupt you if you're with the doctors or resting. Marlowe, she interrupted gently, her tone a mix of exhaustion and warmth. I know. I didn't call to make you feel guilty. Well, mission failed, I muttered, earning a light chuckle from her. Thin, but genuine. There was a pause, long enough for my stomach to twist into tighter knots. How are you feeling? I asked, bracing myself. About the same, she admitted. Tired. The treatments are... She trailed off for a moment. They're hard this time, Marlowe. Harder than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my voice to stay steady. But they're working, right? They're still working? A beat of silence. The doctors are hopeful, she said carefully, her tone dancing around the truth. And that's what I'm holding on to. I closed my eyes, leaning back in the chair as the tension in my chest pressed down harder. I hate that I'm not there. I hate that I'm stuck here doing something that doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things. Don't say that, she said firmly, her energy spiking just enough to make her words sharp. What you're doing is important. You're doing your part, something I know you don't want to do, but you're doing it anyway. That's the Marlowe I raised, the strong one. Strong, I scoffed quietly. I feel like I'm falling apart every time I think about you. Her voice softened again. Sweetheart, you're allowed to fall apart sometimes. Just don't stay there, okay? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, biting back the tears that threatened to spill. Okay, I'll let you get back to whatever it is they've got you doing, she said, her voice lighter, but I could hear the fatigue bleeding through. I just needed to remind myself I have the best daughter in the world. Mom, my voice cracked. Love you, Marlowe. Love you too, Mom. I'll call as soon as I'm done here, I promise. Don't stress yourself over it, she said gently. Just stay strong for both of us. The line clicked and I sat there, gripping the phone like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. The bailiff peeked in a few moments later. Her face was kind but cautious. Ready? She asked softly. No, not even close. But I nodded, stood up, and walked back into the room where none of these people had any idea how much weight I was carrying. It was the second round of cancer for my mother. She had beat it the first time when I was a teenager. When I turned 18, I got a wild idea to travel from our home in Red Bluff, California, along the entire West Coast. It had been a celebration of my adulthood, but also the adventure I had never had because my mother had been sick for so long. She told me to go. As I plotted my route, she helped me mark the best places to stop for food, lodging, and any important sites along the way. I saved up what I could, thinking I would settle somewhere and get a job to pay the rest of the way. It was a wild idea, but one many 18-year-old kids had. I traveled south first, getting to the Mexican border before turning around. I passed places like Disneyland and Universal Studios without the cash to actually go into any of the parks. Standing outside, I imagined what it would have been like to be one of those kids with memories of theme parks, princesses, and talking mice. Instead, my mom raised me as a single mom, working two jobs most of my life. I didn't blame her for anything. She gave me everything she could. Vacations for us were overnight trips that took us to the coast. We collected seashells we took home and glued to furniture to remember our trips. My mom would make wind chimes and carve the date into a small piece of driftwood. She taught me how to enjoy the simple things. When I traveled back north, I found myself stopping in Portland, Oregon to find a job. That was 6 years ago. Many times I thought about moving back to be with my mom or at least closer to her. However, she always told me to stay in Oregon. I was on my way to becoming a store manager at Target, and the opportunities in Red Bluff were limited. Earlier in the year, when they found that her cancer had returned, I renewed my efforts to come back. She insisted I didn't uproot the life I had built for her. I visited as often as my days off allowed. With each visit, I could see her getting skinnier and weaker, giving me the impression that the treatment wasn't working. Now, in July, it had been 5 months since they found the cells again. Her voice on the phone sounded even weaker than before, a fragile thread holding together what little strength she had left. Every word she spoke felt like a reminder of how little time we might have, and it made the distance between us feel unbearable. The guilt gnawed at me constantly. Guilt for not being there, for not knowing how to help, and for the selfish part of me that dreaded what might come next. I wanted to believe in the doctors and the treatments, but every strained syllable in her voice chipped away at that hope, leaving only a raw, aching fear. The bailiff let me back into the jury room, and she looked down at me with a regretful face. I knew what she was thinking. I should have bolted the moment she let me use the telephone. When I returned to the room, it was clear that the judge had instructed everyone to stop talking. We weren't supposed to have side conversations or discuss things without everyone present. As I entered, Don let out a vast sigh, throwing up his hands. It's about time. You're just holding us all up. Before I could even muster up a decent response, the foreperson stood, looking at the bailiff that was still standing in the room. Her hand rested on her gun belt, and I had to wonder if she didn't think about shooting Don. I had never touched a gun, but I was thinking about shooting Don. Bailiff, I think we have a problem. We have one juror that is refusing to follow the letter of the law and follow the evidence as presented. He is disagreeing without explanation, causing us to sit as a hung jury. The bailiff nodded, her eyes on Don. Even with the foreperson not using his name, the officer was under no misunderstanding who the troublemaker was. I'll let the judge know. You'll need to wait here until we hear from his office. With that, we were left alone. We had no devices, no TV. Some had books they fished from their bags, settling in for the long haul. At that moment, I was mad at myself for loading all my books onto my e-reader and not having a physical one in my hand. Thinking the e-reader counted as a device, I hadn't bothered to bring it in. Resting my head on my hand, I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to block out the quiet noises around me. My body hummed with tension, every muscle coiled from anxiety I couldn't shake. The case was important. I knew that. It was my duty, my responsibility. But none of it mattered compared to my mother. The thought of her suffering alone while I was stuck here felt like a knife twisting in my chest, cutting deeper with every passing hour.